Hey hoes, my name's Crit,
I'm Tia.
And I'm Michael.
and welcome to Island Fever, where grown Pacific Islanders talk about doing grown things. You know, a lot of you out there just love us so much, and you just can't wait for our next episodes to come out. And so we thought, you know what? We're going to give you a bonus segment called Fresh Takes to give you that fix, Tia, tell us, what is Fresh Takes?
Fresh Takes is exactly that. We're going to give you our hot takes on everything film, TV, entertainment, anything and everything that's topical and buzzing right now. Because we know that's exactly what you need to carry you over. And you don't, unfortunately, get to see our beautiful faces, but maybe it'll make you listen to all the serious things that we have to say. Yeah. So you're welcome.
Our beautiful voices.
Mhm.
No, I don't think y'all. I didn't inherit that trait, that good Islander singing voice,
Oh,
and
no.
neither
That would
did
be
you. So
No. I would be doing a whole different thing if I did inherit that from the
no,
ancestors.
seriously.
Did not. That's why we're yapping on a podcast.
So Michael, what is our fresh take on today?
Yeah, today's fresh take is on Moana 2. Dun, dun, dun. Just hit Disney Plus this week after wrapping up $1 billion at the box office. Moana 2 is the sequel to Moana, of course, 2016 film, and it's set 3 years after the original. It follows Moana. She embarks on a daring quest to locate the island of Motufetu. This is her first time as a Tautai herself. She receives a title from her village, has to put together a crew. On that crew, we have a historian, Moni, we have a craftswoman, Loto, and a farmer, Keke. All the people you would need in a voyage. And we see Moana grow from a navigator to a leader, a chief in her people. And we get to see all the things that she has to overcome to get to Motu Fetu and unite the islands of Oceania.
First of all, $1 billion, that's not an easy feat. That's not just for Pacifica films, this is for films in general. And there's only 57 films ever to have crossed that $1 billion mark. And I think it's really awesome to be able to say that this was written and directed by Pacific Islanders. Namely, Daniel Miller was both a writer and director on the film, and she's the first Pacifica woman to do so for a major studio film. So,
Go Dana.
Yeah, go Dana. We love to see it. Breaking glass ceilings, a very big one too.
Yeah, it's a huge one, and I think because Moana just means so much to so many people as one of the first Pacifica films to really be put on the stage out there. I think before we start giving our hot takes, given that huge significance, I want to start by asking about your experiences when Moana first hit the scene. What has been, your affair with Moana? Let's put it that way. Michael, your affair with Moana. What's your relationship like with Moana? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I don't know if there's not another film that has made me cry more, and it's so interesting being an animated film, but because of my cultural heritage and growing up never seeing someone like Moana, someone like me represented on film, especially not like a Disney film, I've absolutely loved ever since 2016 when Moana came out. It's been such a special thing for me to see. And I always look at my nieces and nephews who grow up watching it, seeing all these little girls wanting to dress up as Moana, this Disney character who represents us. For me, yeah, it's been huge. And then on top of that, I did get to be a character on the live action Moana, which was a dream come true. And the whole thing has just been very spiritual, almost surreal that I get to be connected to such a wonderful film that has totally changed everything for Pacific Islanders in today's world.
Hey,
Congrats. Our little Moana character within our podcast. Our wayfinder. I'm not gonna lie, like avoided watching Moana for like 4 years. Everybody would be like, "Have you seen it? Have you seen it? You must love it." Blah blah blah. But I was like, I've told Crit this before. I avoided like all Pacifica stuff because I was like having like an imposter syndrome, like kind of grief being away from the culture, and anything that I would watch would like destroy me. And so I was like, I cannot watch this. I know that this, like, because I at that point hated crying. Then over COVID, my mom was like, you have to watch this. I can't believe you haven't seen this. And then I watched it and I cried, and it wasn't devastating. It was beautiful and I loved it. And then we got to go see it about 3 times in when Moana 2 came out. And I got to be surrounded by everybody, and it was such a healing. I didn't even cry when I watched it because it was such a like healing experience. I was like surrounded by everybody and my homies, and I was like, oh, okay, like we're back. And so that's like my little connection to Moana. I love her. Like, obviously, I knew I was gonna love her. I just like was like, I don't want to cry right now. And then I didn't. I just loved it. I really loved being with everybody and seeing it. And yeah, and it's really important. I wish I had Moana when I was younger to see her. It's like so important to see ourselves on screen in the right way.
Right, because not all representation is good representation, but
yeah, I'm just really excited for little girls and boys to see themselves on screen in like such a beautiful way, strong way too. That's my connection.
My connection, so 2016, that feels like a lifetime ago. So at that time, like my biggest kind of influence as far as entertainment goes was Dwayne Johnson. And I got to go to the premiere with him and my auntie, and it was a whole family affair. Diana Jane was there, and it was kind of like, it was almost like surreal seeing us celebrated in Hollywood. Like, you know, we took over freaking Hollywood Boulevard, and it was just our people everywhere, you know, and I'd never seen us in LA like that before. Yeah, and I remember thinking, I don't know, it was kind of weird. I think it almost, and I'm trying not to judge it, but I feel like I found validation in that, and that should never be the case, right? But I think a lot of people at the time were just so grateful to have something. So to circle back 8 years later and come back to this, and I'm in such a different place in my life where, you know, I think my values have changed so much, and yeah, just as far as my journey goes, I'm here in the capacity of like having consulted on the film, and now we're working, like me and Michael, we both helped promote the film, and we did so in a way that was meaningful to our people, and holding community screenings and things like that. Like it just felt like there's a lot more depth to myself and to the movie as well. So I feel like, yeah, coming to Moana 2 and experiencing this time, it was a very different experience, and I'm not gonna like judge either of them or compare either of them. I think they were special in their own way, but it was, yeah, there was just so much richness this time around, that I can appreciate, and I again, I think it speaks to the film itself just taking on its, you know, this whole new kind of experience and just life of its own.
Well, I think it's interesting what you say about like, I don't think it's like validation. It's just like that was kind of the first time we were seen in a more authentic way, in a like in a big way. And then look what they've done with that opportunity. So okay, here's our introduction, and then now Moana 2 with like so many people that are involved in this film, like the doors that were opened from that. Because you could have Hollywood's like so fickle that they could have easily been like, here's your one movie, and then here we've introduced you, and then that's what introduces you for the rest of like 20 years, and then like, oh, you're Pacifica, oh, Moana, and then now it's like even Moana 2 has opened up that door for the rest of us to kind of walk through too. I feel like that's what I feel has happened.
Yeah.
Did it take a while? Yeah, but it's a good step.
And look how far Moana is from like Elvis in Hawaii and 50 First Dates. Like all the other depictions in Hollywood of the islands were from a tourist lens. And then here we have our traditional stories with our gods and our history. I think that's why, Tia, you and I, like, we're all getting emotional or watching this, because we can't believe. Like, I couldn't imagine being on Hollywood Boulevard with you, Crit, in that setting with all Pacific Islanders and being celebrated in that way. That must have been surreal.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of people, I think that is the case, but I do actually think personally, I felt validated and and I'm just like, oh man, isn't that sad, right? You're like,
Well, yeah, it's like I feel like that with like every win we have, it's like,
mm,
oh, this is amazing. I feel great. It's 2025.
right,
Like, wait, why is it happening now? Like
yeah,
that's my like it's always gonna be kind of like a realization. That's the burden of being the first,
hmm,
like of doing stuff is that like, okay, yeah, we've been doing this, but now you're giving us you're actually watching, you're listening. Yeah, but validation's great. It's like, but we're here, we're not going anywhere.
yeah, and I think that's one thing that I always try to tell creatives in general, right? Is like, do not let Hollywood be what validates you. Don't
Right.
let
Yeah.
this sort of and because whatever story you tell, like that's a success, and that's something that
Yeah.
you know anything you bring to life, that journey and that whole process, and just being able to do that, like that's something that's to be celebrated. So now that we've set the scene, let's get into these fresh takes. I want to start by saying that I do not impress easy, especially when it comes to Pacifica films, especially in Hollywood. I don't really have much to say about them. And as Michael and Tia pointed out earlier, there's just been a long, rampant history of problematic shit out there, and it centers white people, right? And we've been the backdrops, and then even with, and let me not go too in on some people, but a lot of the Pacifica representation out there, since being relegated to the background, when we have been in the foreground, it's still very one dimensional. It's still very much that warrior race. And so, yeah, when it comes to Moana, that was like the first time that you get to see like nuance, and a character nuance in our people. And so, yeah, I can honestly say, as someone who grew up on a Pacific island, which is Aotearoa. A lot of people don't want to admit that that's Pacific island, but it is. And as someone who has a degree in Pacific Studies and also taught Pacific Studies at the University of Auckland, I can honestly say that this film took so much care in showing the beauty of our collective cultures. But then there are also moments created where our individual cultures were celebrated too. And I feel like they did that so that all of us could see ourselves and just really have that moment to cherish and really take home and again feel seen. And I'm talking about every little detail, from the sails on the canoes to the traditional navigation or wayfinding, to the alf ceremony, to the choreography, to the three new characters, who just represented the ingenuity of our people. There's just a lot of respect and delicacy that went into all of it, and it went to places that the first one didn't go. And I think that's the whole idea behind Moana as a character and Moana 2 as a film. They just really pushed themselves to go to another level. And I feel like to the everyday viewer, aka the white viewer, you just wouldn't know that, and you wouldn't have that appreciation, because how could you? Their education isn't readily available. Even in Aotearoa, that education, I grew up on an island, and that stuff isn't readily available to us because it's just not part of the curriculum, right? Like it wasn't until I probably went to university that I got to get a greater understanding of our people and our greatness and our histories and our stories, right? On a deeper level, at least, beyond songs and kind of like a surface level understanding of our culture. And so I just want to point out that one of my favorite scenes of the films is when we're introduced to the Micronesians and Melanesian characters at the end, because it's like, yo, Polynesians, we love to think that we're the only people in the Pacific, but there's just so many experiences and just so much diversity across the Pacific, and to finally see those, acknowledged, as someone who has done so much work within, spaces to be inclusive in that, it's nice to see that come to life, and then you see it done in a way where you can imagine what's going to be next, and how things are just going to get bigger and better, and just tying back to that whole theme of connectivity and how we're so much better off with each other. So anyway, let me stop there. That was a whole lot. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to quote your cousin, my uncle, Dwayne Johnson. Just kidding, not my uncle, but
My uncle too.
my
My
hero.
dad.
Anyway, no, when we interviewed him at the Moana 2 premiere, he said Moana, the movie, opened the door. Moana 2 just kick down the wall. I mean, the 2016 film was able to accomplish and bring awareness and turn everyone's head a little bit. What is Pacific Island culture? What is this? And pique their interest. Moana 2 deep dived into, like you said, the Ava ceremony, Moana getting a title, navigation, and the gods. All these things that we as Pacific Islanders, even some Pacific Islanders who probably didn't know much about history, I'm sure that this movie help them dive a little deeper. So, in my honest opinion, this is one of the greatest films ever made about Pacific Islanders. And it was disappointing to see the ratings and the critiques that people had about this film, because for me, that's coming from a lack of context and a lack of understanding. And I have to give them grace, because I guess it would be the same as if you were watching The Last Samurai or Braveheart or The Godfather and had zero context about those films. It's a nice story, but it doesn't hit you in the gut like it did for us Pacific Islanders. So, looking at the Moana movie, the purpose of the movie was what? Like you said, unite the islands. And there's this character, Nalo, who is, a mischievous god and does not want that to happen, because he knows that the islanders are going to be weaker when they're divided. He doesn't want them to gain strength. He wants to keep control. And so Moana goes off on this quest as a Tautai. The whole story for me, even the fact that they didn't quite know where they were going, that was even reminiscent of all my understanding and from books I've read about Pacific Islander navigation, was they didn't have, it wasn't like traditional Western navigating of like, hey, we got to head north, east, and there should be an island out there, like drawing out a map. That didn't exist. There were no maps. It was all chance. It was all oratory culture. And religion was so mixed into daily life, there was no separation. So that idea of following the ancestors and the gods, and that there would be an island out there, just trusting, having that much faith and courage, that was all reality. So to see that in this film was very encouraging. I loved it and made me emotional in that way. And then also the idea of uniting the islands and the importance of that. We see that in today's world with things like tattooing, tatau, which was only preserved in Samoa. Out of all the islands, we know that all the islands practice tattooing, but only Samoa had preserved it, the Suape family. And just recently, in the past 50 years, they've gone around and shared that art with the Hawaiians, now with the Tongans, and it's making its way back across Oceania. And then we have the Tongans with the drums. That was only in Tonga. No other island had drums anymore after colonization. And the Tongans shared the drums with everybody, the nose flute. And then going to navigation. There was only one navigator that they were able to find back in I think it was the 60s. And they called him Uncle Mao. And he led that first navigation from Hawaii down to Tahiti, and later trained Nainoa Thompson, a Hawaiian. So we have a Micronesian training a Hawaiian how to navigate in the ancient form again. There's all these things that have allowed Pacific Islanders to reconnect with their roots. Everything that had been lost since colonization is solely because the islands are coming together again, which is the whole purpose of this movie. Yeah. That's why a film like this is so much more than just an animated film. This is something that's happening and that we are experiencing currently in the islands, of coming together, sharing culture with each other, and reconnecting with our roots, filling all the gaps, putting the puzzle pieces together for all of us. That's why for me this was so powerful. I absolutely loved it.
Oh my god. Okay, I gotta chime in before we get a bunch of angry Fijians like calling in that we didn't acknowledge that we got tattooing from them.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
there like like
Yeah.
the
I was
debate?
just ripping, but that's so true. No, well,
Oh,
that
Mike gonna.
story. No, the story of the two sisters that came from Fiji. There's people who think that they came from Fiti, which is a Samoan island, because the argument is, or like the debate is, if the two sisters swam from an island called Fiji, that seems impossible, but they could have swam from Fiti, which is really close to Hawaii.
Oh,
So.
see, we're gonna get a bunch
Well,
of phone calls now.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is the
Phone
discord.
call. But also,
Um,
I just wanted to point out two things. Like to Michael's point, like bringing in Nalo again, the intentionality behind just affirming our gods and deities that existed before Christianity hit our islands, right? Because I don't think that there was like explicitly spelt out in Moana in the first one, and so now it's like, oh, we're really going there, and then the other point you brought up was, you know, I know you're giving people a lot of grace by saying, they don't have context, but like, I never watch a foreign film and like look at it and be like, oh, like this is crap because it didn't have,
Yeah.
like you
yeah,
can
that's
still,
like the
yeah,
burden of, not being kind of like a Eurocentric
I
historical
yeah.
movie.
I also think it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been because it was an animated film.
mm,
Yeah.
Like they were viewing it as a cute children's story,
cutesy.
when in our reality we see all the tie-in, and we're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is real, this is legit. Shoot, the other thing I wanted to add, you were talking about tattooing, and then
And then the
I
deities, the
forgot to
gods
talk
and
about the
deities.
ancestors. When Moana gets her tattoo, that's
Mm-hmm.
also very real. When I got my tattoo, so the belief in Samoan culture with the tupuna, the tools, is that our ancestors are in the tools,
Mm.
and so like we're getting them put into us forever. And so even that part of the film, that image and that idea was so touching because that's real. That is what we believe, that we are tied in with our ancestors that closely.
Hey.
Oh, that's sweet. That makes me want to cry.
And also just be some pretty little decoration, like
Yeah.
it doesn't carry the same weight, that it does
Yeah,
for our people.
yeah. So watch that film without context and see that tattooing scene. You're like, oh, cool, tattoos.
Yeah.
For us, we understand the spirituality behind the tattoos and
Mhm.
how much that means. Like that was an emotional scene, but for other people, it might have just been like, oh, she came back to life. She's alive. And cool. She has some ink on her body.
Yeah.
But for us, we see the context. Even little things like the ink, the llama that was used was saved by your grandmother. She would get it from Kukuina and would save the soot from the llama until you were of age, and then you could receive your tattoo with the tools that represent your ancestors. Usually they were bones. And so and then even the hair in the kuina, those are your ancestors' hairs. That's where you get your wisdom, your power, your mana. So all these things that the ancestor tie in, like if you don't understand the context, it doesn't mean as much. You're just gonna miss all that. And so I can see why they gave it these low ratings, but it's just like, why? We need people who understand to be writing these films.
Yeah, and we do. And that's where I can come in and tell all the Western critics that this film does still fall within the Western structure of storytelling. We have our own ways of telling stories that we instantly click into, that for us this has that extra layer in. It's like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. But but the critique of it that Moana 2 doesn't have character development for Moana, or it doesn't have a strong enough motivation and call to action, or there's no real villain. It's like so Western, and it is really like if you don't know, you're not going to know. But also, if you're a writer, if you're a filmmaker, and you're making a critique of this film, they do fall in. Like the Western storytelling main call to action or conflict is usually, and I'm coming from my backgrounds of being a writer and having an MFA in writing for film, and having to study film, is that you have a traditional call to action or a conflict that is either man versus man or man versus nature, man versus the supernatural. This has all of those elements in it. Moana has it's Moana versus nature. She's in the seas having to deal with that with a new team. It's Moana versus the supernatural. Our ancestors called her to action, and then the gods are testing her as she's on this journey. Because we don't visually see the villain, we as Pacific Islanders know that he's there the entire time testing her, and because our stories are always saying that. And then I think my main gripe with these critiques that don't understand this story is that she doesn't have character development, but that's so clear on this one. we are such a community-based culture, and she's being called to action to save the community, because if she doesn't go on this journey, we don't exist anymore. And then while she's on it, she has a new team of people, which all of those characters represent something that our culture, like how we preserve our culture, they all represent that. And then she has this little moment with Maui saying, I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm having this, like, I have to be this leader and I can't do it. And then she does do it, and she sacrifices herself for the community. And then she becomes allegedly a demigod, maybe, possibly in the third one. And so I don't know how else you can make a character development stronger than that. She's gone from being like, she went on this one adventure, she saved the island. Now she has the weight of that on her shoulders, and she's being called again. And then she has to go on this adventure. And yeah, there's cute little like set pieces. I think another annoying part of the bad critiques were that it was a TV show and now it's a film, and now it just feels like episodes of TV pushed into a film. But like, that's so inside baseball. Like, if this came out 20 years ago, like if you weren't in the industry, the internet didn't exist, you wouldn't know that, and you would accept this film as just a film. And I think that it's kind of like a weak critique to base that on like the trades, like what you read on the internet. It's just like, accept the film for what it is. And I think that those set pieces and the little adventures that she goes on is really important to test her throughout. And like, they're cute little, I think I read something that someone said it's junk food for kids. I love the little coconut, the kakamura, and I love the little chicken, the little spam and eggs, the little pig and the chicken. And we accept minions. In LA, we see a minion off of the 101. Like, we accept the minions and all that stuff, but like, these are fun little things for kids to watch too. And it's fun. Like, yeah, so I don't know. I don't accept the bad critiques, because I think that it's like kind of weak critique on a sequel of such a good film, like such a well-liked film, which also sometimes is like good. It's being compared to itself. Sometimes that's a good, the critique is like, okay, it could be compared to so many other things, but because Moana was so critically acclaimed, I think it's like a win that they're so harshly critiquing Moana 2, because it's like, oh, well, it's in its own like own little kind of arena that like other things can't touch. Kind of like Jordan Peele has that thing, like, you're not really comparing Jordan Peele films to other horror films. You're just comparing his own, which is, which one do you like best? Like, rate his films 1, 2, 3. You're not like comparing outside of it, because I don't see a lot of it being compared to other animated children's movies. It's like being compared to the first one. So it's like in its own little island.
Moana cinematic universe.
Yes.
Right.
So
Wait, I
that's
just want
my
to say,
spiel.
going back to the care that was taken, right? The Kakamora, and you notice that they have like a redemption arc in the second
I
movie,
love
right?
them.
And that's because like the Solomon Islands, people in the community came out saying, this is kind of problematic. Like, we don't like the way that they were portrayed, and so to the filmmakers' credit, they corrected. And so again, going back to the level of care that was taken, and it's one of those things where the first movie, I mean, it's a great movie and it appealed to a bunch of audiences, but then it just goes to show that when you start to veer away and like create something specifically for the community, like some people aren't gonna appreciate that. Yeah.
But it's like such an opportunity to appreciate the culture and learn. Like, I went to Disneyland last year and I saw like little girls dressed as Moana that were not Pacifica at all. And my friends were like, how do you feel about that? I'm like, I don't really love it. I love that there's so many people that love Moana. And like, my little cousins love Moana. Like, every little kid loves Moana. They like eat it up. And I love that, but I also think it's such a good opportunity to be like, okay, you you want to dress up like Moana, that's cool, but let's have a lesson here of like cultural appreciation, and that maybe you dress up as Cinderella and you just appreciate Moana, if you know what I'm saying. Like that's a thing that I have a little bit of a gripe with, but I love that they enjoy it.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
don't
the
actually
opposite.
mind.
I yeah,
Yeah,
I like seeing little girls who are not Pacific Islander wearing Moana clothing.
really,
yeah,
Absolutely,
I don't mind
because
it.
like think about when we were younger and all of these Pacific
that's
Islander girls
true.
were wearing gowns, all these Western clothing, and they were
That's
dressing
true.
up as them. So like for me, it's like, oh, it's our turn. It's cool. Like they
I
want to be like
guess.
us. Yes,
Yeah,
like
that I
let.
get that. I'm
So I
more
love
like
that.
No,
it's like
I
a
think,
slippery slope into like grass skirts and coconut bras at like a party with none of us at it.
but
Do you know
that's
what
where
I
I'm
mean?
like, it's very specific. You know, when I see someone
Hmm.
inspired by a movie character, I think that's something very specific, and I think that's really cute. You know, I think that's
Yeah.
really beautiful to see. You know, like someone sees something in themselves and they want to be like
Yeah.
this character from a different culture. It's more so when basically white people take it and try to dress it up as their own, you know, and
Yes.
pass it off
Yeah.
as something and try to sell it and all those things. That's where it's like, ooh, this doesn't feel
Okay. Yeah,
like
that makes
it's
sense.
yeah, it doesn't feel like it's
I
coming
just
from a
am
place
like,
of inspiration or like yeah.
right. I'm just like, I hope they're having a conversation of like appreciation of the culture.
Yeah.
That's it. I love seeing little girls with the Moana dolls. I see them all the time. Like they just
Yeah.
have, and I'm like, that's exciting to me because I didn't have like a little brown doll when I was younger, and that would have been exciting. It was just a pause. I had a pause. I'm not gonna fight a child in Disneyland and their parent to say get that off your child. I was just like, my friend asked me, and I was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't know how I. I think it's an opportunity. That's all, and I
I,
think
Yeah.
I
that's what this Moana movie is.
I think of it as like imagine back in the early 1900s when you know in Samoa, for example, men started wearing pants, right? Started wearing
Yeah,
slacks and shirts. Um, Imagine if back then women in Europe started wearing grass skirts
yeah,
because they thought that that was the right thing to do. That was the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Even tattooing. I know this is like such a hot topic on both sides of allowing or being okay with people who are not Pacific Islander getting Pacific Islander designs put on them. I had one friend describe it as like, well, it's like you're colonizing their body. You know,
I
like
guess.
they're putting your designs on their body for life.
Yeah,
And so
but
there's something there that's that when you shift the perspective, it's like, okay, it makes me feel proud that people of other ethnicities or other cultures
Oh,
who
I
want
don't.
this
what
is
we
just the
have.
conversation. You know,
It,
this is
yeah,
the idea that I was talking about before, right? About because when I say I feel validated by Hollywood, but essentially what I'm
Yeah,
saying is I'm being validated by this white institution, right? And so I feel
yeah,
like I always, when it comes to like other people wearing our culture, I never want to feel any kind of sense of validation by that. I think it's different when I see, you know, like someone dresses up as like Serena Williams or something like that. You know, like that's different. You know, it's very much like they're inspired by this person and what they've done in there. But when they start to wear the culture, so I think the way I'd distinguish like people in the islands dressing up in Western clothes, right? That is us kind of assimilating. You know, we've taken on this idea
yeah.
that they this is the better way of, you know, the more sophisticated or the more fashionable or whatever, right? But then when they do it to us, it's more like it's not them validating us. It's just them taking what they want, but not giving anything back. You know, like that's typically how it
Also,
goes.
like
to, to me, I
how
feel like it's footholds. Like we're gaining little footholds, 1% at a time.
I guess they can do it without touching it. Like
or profiting off it, like, or...
yeah, like I don't know, like it would be great. I think I always think that it's like it's a beautiful way of looking at things. But in like say 50 years when we actually make strides to like owning our cultures again and having like our points of view have weight and we have a little bit more power over and sovereignty over like our islands and our culture. Um, but we don't have that now. So it's not pushing us forward towards that. It's skewing the perspective into the whiteness of it all, or you're not part of our culture and now we're looking at you taking it. If we were in a space where we had power and sovereignty, I think that, okay, cool, but we don't. And so it's like you're taking it one step too far.
I don't know. So let's do an example. Look at the Scottish kilt. Imagine if we see more and more men start to wear a kilt around as a fashion statement. Yeah, they're taking something from a different culture because they think it's cool, but it's bringing more awareness. Now it's becoming a trend, and now we're looking around and seeing these kilts like, dang, yeah, Scotland is pretty dope.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but why does it need to be a white person wearing that? Could you just skew the focus to us doing it and then not making it a trend? Also, not you bringing up my other culture.
I did that for you, Tia. No, it's not specifically white people, because we see a lot of Asian people getting, Samoan designs on their body as well.
But for me, it's still that
it's spreading. It's more footholds in the world of like, this is us, this is our thing, and we're here.
But it's not
the reason why I would never claim that as any kind of victory on our end is because it's often the communities that they take an active part in oppressing, right? And so and when that's the case, that power dynamic is there. It's not a equal exchange of any kind, right? It's very much a take, and we still keep you down there.
It's also a slippery slope of like, even with Moana, and that Moana 2 was so specific years later, is like, to bring it back to Hollywood sees us as a trend. And now even more so, they see us as a trend. We make money. We made $1 billion for them. Like, and that's the struggle and the line we have to walk of like, we're not a trend. We are like people with points of view, and we have weight in what we say. And now we have power. And like, now it's our job to walk through that door and say like, here's our culture from us, and only from us right now, because it is going to, like, they'll see us as a trend. Oh, you make money. And we're not a trend. We exist all the time. And we have continued to exist and resist colonization, and we're all still here, and we have something to say. And I think when we get to the point, like, I just, it always worries me that they're going to be like, you're trendy. Like, oh, we need this Pacifica story now because it makes money. And then like, and Hollywood, I don't trust to do that completely right. I trust the team of people that were on Moana too, because they were intentional about it, and Disney was too. But like, it's always a fear of mine that because of how the industry works, that they're not going to authentically tell our stories. And that's where we have to come in and be like, no, we're going to tell our stories. And then like, let us tell our stories first, and show to you that we're not a trend. We're like here to stay, and we exist.
Do not get me started on freaking Hollywood. Anyway,
sorry. Right when I'm trying to start my career too, just really heavy opinions. They'll be like, no, not her.
Well, okay, so we talked about the criticisms we didn't agree with. So what are some, like, if any, criticisms that you have of the film? Because and no disrespect to the girls who I got to meet, and they're really lovely, the songwriters of the movie. But I did like the the soundtrack of the first one. I do love it more than I did the second one. Not to say I didn't like the songs on the second one. I think they're great. I especially love Matangi's song, and Oli always like sings down. Like that girl is so talented. But yeah, something about the first one, and I don't know if it's nostalgia as well, and like having those songs come out for the first time and hearing Te Waka and everything like that. So I think that plays a little bit into it. But I do think, sorry, I think the music of the first one's better.
I like have no opinion about that. I also like it. It's not that it's hard. Like I can look at this story as a story written on the page. I can see it written on the page and stuff. But I'm not somebody who's watching children's films.
But you listen to music though. Like I know you'd be listening
yeah,
to music.
I listen to music, but also like I don't love musicals. This film would be so great if it just wasn't a musical. To me.
I love musicals.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, they're singing. Like it's always like I'm like, oh, they're singing now. And so that's just me though. I think it works great as a musical, and I love that it's like our music, you know, like but I don't. If it wasn't a musical, it would still be good to me.
I like the music. I agree. The first music, the first Moana's music was like home run, just out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Even the fact that they had a song with the languages of the Pacific. I wish there was something like that in Moana 2, because that when I first heard that in theaters, like I got emotional. I looked over at my dad. I could tell my dad was just like I understand what they're saying. They're speaking Samoan in this. Like this, it was so wild. So I wish there was something like that in Moana 2. The only other thing that I wish that had been in Moana 2 was Tula Fale. There was a chanter when Moana's just about to go on her voyage, and all the village gets together. There's a woman chanting. I thought in that moment it would have been really cool if they made that an orator giving a speech, because that's such a huge part of Samoan culture.
But see, this is where I'll push back, because I believe they were singing Tukalauan song then. And so like maybe her role, you know, and I have a lot of Tukalauan family, but I don't claim to be an expert or anything. But you know, maybe that was her place in that, you know, in Tukalauan culture. So I wouldn't want to. I don't want to have any angry listeners from the Tukalauan community. Y'all hate Fijians is the letters we gonna get. But I think with the second one, I liked how it was only when I heard Tiana explain it, when she was like, you know, it was Tiana, Kaliko, and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name. But when they explained that, you know, Laina, that's his name. Anyway, they explained it as like, this is the island before we broke off into, you know, our respective islands. And so when you're watching like the choreography, which looks kind of weird to us, you know, it's because like this might be the thing that sparked off the haka, or this might be the movement that sparked, you know, the first kind of rumblings of whatever. So I liked it that way, because I could get down with that, you know, like I could be like, oh, it doesn't feel like you're just trying to fit everybody into this thing now. It feels like, you know, this was the world thousands of years before we became who we are, and we're just seeing the beginning of us. And so when I watch it that way, I'm like, oh, okay, I like it just feels a lot more natural and a lot more thoughtful than what the first one did, I think. And I don't know if they had that idea in the first one, but it certainly wasn't translated in my opinion. Yeah. Okay. What do you think of the first? Like, did you have that, or did you see those criticisms, or did you have those criticisms of the first one that Moana came across as like just a mishmash of our people?
I always thought that from the first one. Like, this isn't like Polynesian. I always thought it was like a made up Disney World influenced by our culture. And like wasn't super specific. That's why it was like nice to see in Moana 2 that it was super specific.
Yeah.
I interpreted it as like one of the older civilizations, because it had little pieces of the different islands. Just the general idea that everyone came from one people, and so who knows how it actually looks back then. Maybe there was a kuinga for the royalty, and they also used the taia. You know, like just that idea. Let the imagination go, and then the ancestors obviously were the Lapita people came. originally and settled all the islands.
Okay, so wrapping up our conversation, our fresh take on
Oh,
Moana
hold on,
2.
hold on. I can hear Chris clicking.
Oh, sorry. Let me mute. Let me mic. Yeah.
All right, wrapping up our convo, our fresh take, our first fresh take on Moana 2. It sounds like we all love the film. I will say that I do love these films. Part of the reason why I didn't watch Moana for like 4 years was because I was like, I'm very cynical and doubtful that Hollywood will do us justice in our storytelling and our representation. And so I was just like, there's no way that they've done this correctly. And that was just my own ignorance because I didn't know how much cultural consultation was done on this film, and even more so on Moana 2. So I don't have ego. I will say when I was wrong about this film. Crit, do you want to talk more a little bit about the cultural consultation as we wrap this episode up?
Yeah, so with the first one, they established the Oceanic Cultural Trust. Kaliko Lehua Hurley, shout out to her. And, you know, that honestly set the standard for the rest of Disney's films. Like that was like the first time that something like that had been created before. So they took it to another level in the second one as far as making people know how intentional they were, because they actually were part of like the press junkets and things like that. And again, I think that goes back to the fact that Moana 2 had Pacifica writer and director, you know, like we were at every step of this film. And so yeah, I think again, it was just such a richer experience because of the ways that we had more control over it. And you know, Moana 2, both beautiful films, but Moana 2, yeah, it just takes it to another level. That's all I can. That's the only way I can put
And also that cultural trust set a blueprint for other films going
it.
into other cultures too. Because didn't they do that in Encanto? Like they've
Yep.
set that standard now at Disney, which is exciting for everybody. Which is
Love that.
you know how we tell our stories correctly.
All right, so that's it for our very first Fresh Takes. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye, hoes.
44. See you guys.
Bye.